of the same by Kumari Sindhuja Venkataraman and Kumari Shailaja Venkataraman, who are sisters.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मवेद्वरम्।
श्रीमान् वेङ्कटनाथार्य कवितार्तिककेसरी वेदान्ताचार्यवर्यो मे सन्निधत्तां सदा हृदि। जयत्याशितसन्त्रासध्वान्तविध्वंसनोदयः प्रभावान् सीतया देव्या परमव्योमभास्करः। जय जय महावीर महाधीर धौरेय देवासुर समर समय समुदित निखिल निर्जर निर्धारित निरवधिक माहात्म्य दशवदन दमित दैवत परिशतभ्यर्थित दाशरथि भाव दिनकर कुल कमल दिवाकर दिविशतधिपतिरण सहचरण चतुर दशरथ चरमरुण विमोचन कोसल सुता कुमार भाव कंचुकित कारणाकार कौमार केळि गोपायित कौशिगाध्वर रणाध्वर दुर्य भव्य दिव्यास्त्र वृन्द वन्दित प्रणत जन विमत विमतन दुर्ललित दोर्ललित तनुतर विशिक विताडन विगलित विशरारुशरारुताटका ताटकेय जट किरण शकलधर जटिल नटपटि मकुट तट नटन पटु विबुध सरित अति बहुल मधुकलन ललित पदन लीन रस उपमृदित निज वृजिन जहतु फल तनु रुचिर परम मुनिवर युवति नुत कृषिक सुत कथित विदित नव विविध कथा मैथिल नगर सुलोचनालोचन चकोर चंद्र खंड परशुको दंड प्रकांड खंडन शौंड भुजदंड चंड कर किरण मंडल बोधित पुंडरी कवन रुचिलुंटाकलोचन मोचन जनक हृदय शंकातंक परिहृत निखिल नरपति वरण जनक दुहितु कुच तट विहरण समुचित करतल शतकोटि शतगुण कटिन परशुधर मुनिवर कर धृत दुरवन मत मनिज धनुराकर्षण प्रकाशित पारमेष्ट्य क्रतुहर शिखरि कन्तुक विहत्युन्मुख जगतरुन्दुत जित हरिदन्त दन्ति दन्तुरोरोन्त दश वदन दमन कुशल दश शत भुज मुख नृपति कुल रुधिर जर भर भरित पितृतर तटाक तर्पित पितृक बृहुपति सुहति विहति करणत परिडिषु परिका अनृत भय मुषित हृदय पितृवचन पालन प्रतिज्ञावज्ञात यौवराज निषाद राज सौहृत सूचित सौशील्य सागर भरद्वाज शासन परिगृहीत विचित्र चित्रकूट गिरि कटक तट रम्यावसत अनन्य शासनीय प्रणत भरत मकुट तट सुगडित पादुका क्रियाभिषेक निर्वर्तित सर्वलोक योगक्षेम पिशित रुचि विहित दुरित बल मतन तनय बलि भुगनुगति सरबस शयन तृण शकल परिपतन भय चकित सकल सुर मुनिवर बहुमत महास्त्र सामर्थ्य द्रुहिण हर बल मतन दुरालक्ष्य शरलक्ष्य ದಂಡಕಾತಪೋವನ ಜಂಗಮ ಪಾರಿಜಾತ ವಿರಾದ ಹರಿಣ ಶಾರ್ದೂಲ ವಿರುಳಿತ ಬಹುಫಲ ಮಕ ಕಲಮರ ಚನಿಚರ ಮೃಗ ಮೃಗಯಾರಂಭ ಸಂಭೃತ ಚೀರ ಭೃತನುರೋಧ ತ್ರಿಶಿರ ಶಿರಸ್ತೃತಯ ತಿಮಿರ ನಿರಾಸ ವಾಸರಕರ ದೂಷಣ ಜಲ ನಿಧಿ ಶೋಷಣ ತೋಷಿತ ಋಷಿಗಣ ಘೋಷಿತ ವಿಜಯ ಘೋಷಣ ಕರ 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 ತರು ಖಂಡನ ಚಂಡ ಭವನ ತ್ರಿಸಪ್ತ ರಕ್ಷ ಸಹಸ್ರ ನಲವನ ವಿಲೋಲನ ಮಹಾಕಲಭ ಅಸಹಾಯ ಸೂರ ಅನಪಾಯ ಸಾಹಸ ಮಹಿತ ಮಹಾಮೃತ ದರ್ಶನ ಮುದಿತ ಮೈಥಿಲಿ ದೃಢತರ ಪರಿರಂಭನ ವಿಭವ ವಿರೋಪಿತ ವಿಕಟ ವೀರೌರಣ ಮಾರೀಚ ಮಾಯಾ ಮೃಗ ಚರ್ಮ ಪರಿಕರ್ಮಿತ ನಿರ್ಭರ ದರ್ಭಾಸ್ತರಣ ವಿಕ್ರಮ ಯಶೋ ಲಾಭ ವಿಕ್ರೀತ ಜೀವಿತ ಕೃತ್ತರಾಜ ದೇಹದಿ ದಕ್ಷ ಲಕ್ಷಿತ ಭಕ್ತ ಜನ ದಾಕ್ಷಿಣ್ಯ ಕಲ್ಪಿತ ವಿಪುತ ಭಾವಕ ಪಂದಾಪಿ ನಂದಿತ ಅವಂದ್ಯ ಮಹಿಮ ಮುನಿ ಜನ ಭಜನ ಮುಷಿತ ಹೃದಯ ಕಲುಷ ಸಬರಿ ಮೋಕ್ಷ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿಭೂತ ರಂಜನ ತನಯ ಭಾವುಕ ಭಾಷಿತ ರಂಜಿತ ಹೃದಯ ತರಣಿ ಸುತ ಶರಣಾಗತಿ ಪರತಂತ್ರೀಕೃತ ಸ್ವಾತಂತ್ರ್ಯ ಧೃತ ಘಟಿತ ಕೈಲಾಸ ಕೋಟಿ ವಿಕಟ ದುಂದುಪಿ ಕಂಕಾಲ ಕೂಟ ದೂರ ವಿಕ್ಷೇಪ ದಕ್ಷ ದಕ್ಷಿಣೇತರ ಪಾದಾಂಗುಷ್ಟಧರ ಚಲನ ವಿಶ್ವಸ್ತ ಸುಹೃದಾಶ್ರಯ ಅತಿ ಪೃಥುಲ ಬಹು ವಿಟಪಿ ಗಿರಿಧರಣ ವಿವರ ಯುಗ ಪದುದಯ ವಿವೃತ ಚಿತ್ರ ಪುಂಗ ವೈಚಿತ್ರ್ಯ ವಿಪುಲ ಭುಜ ಶೈಲ ಮೂಲ ನಿಪಿಡ ನಿಪೀಡಿತ ರಾವಣ ರಣ ರಣಕ ಜನಕ ಚತುರುದತಿ ವಿಹರಣ ಚತುರ ಕಪಿ ಕುಲಪತಿ ಹೃದಯ ವಿಶಾಲ ಶಿಲಾತಲ ಧಾರಣ ದಾರುಣ ಶಿಲೀಮುಖ ಅಪಾರ ಪಾರ ವಾರ ಪರಿಕಾ ಪರಿಹೃತ ಪರಪುರ ಪರಿಶ್ರುತ ದವ ದಹನ ಜವನ ಪವನ ಭವ ಕಪಿವ ಪರಿಶ್ವಂಗ ಭಾವಿತ ಸರ್ವಸ್ವದಾನ ಅಹಿತ ಸಹೋದರ ರಕ್ಷ ಪರಿಗ್ರಹ ವಿಸಂವಾದಿ ವಿವಿಧ ಸಚಿವ ವಿಪ್ರಲಂಬ ಸಮಯ ಸಂಭ್ರಮ ಸಮುಜೃಂ ಸರ್ವೇಶ್ವರ ಭಾವ ಸಕೃತ್ ಪ್ರಪನ್ನ ಜನ ಸಂರಕ್ಷಣ ದೀಕ್ಷಿತ ವೀರ ಸತ್ಯವ್ರತ ಪ್ರತಿಶಯನ ಭೂಮಿಕಾ ಭೂಷಿತ ಪಯೋಧಿ ಪುಲಿನ ಪ್ರಳಯ ಶಿಖಿ ಪರುಷ ವಿಶಿಕ ಶಿಖಾ ಶೋಷಿತ ಕೂಪಾರ ವಾರಿಪೂರ ಪ್ರಬಲ ರಿಪು ಕಲಹ ಕುತುಕ ಚಟುಲ ಕಪಿಕುಲ ಕರತಲ ತೂಲಿತ ಹೃತ ಗಿರಿ ನಿಖರ ಸಾಧಿತ ಸೇತುಪಥ ಸೀಮಾ ಸೀಮಂತಿತ ಸಮುದ್ರ ಧೃತಗತಿ ತರು ಮುಖವರೂಕಿನಿ ನಿರುದ್ಧ ಲಂಕಾವರೋಧ ವೇಪತುಲಾಸ್ಯ ಲೀಲೋಪದೇಶ ದೇಶಿಕ ಧನುರ್ಜಾಘೋಷ ಗಗನ ಚರ ಕನತ ಗಿರಿ ಗರಿ ಮದರ ನಿಗಮಮಯ ನಿಜ ಗರುಡ ಗರುಡ ನಿಲಲವ ಗಲಿತ ವಿಷವದನ ಶರಕದನ ಅಕೃತ ಚರವನ ಚರರಣ ಕರಣ ವೈಲಕ್ಷ್ಯ ಕೂಣಿತಾಕ್ಷ ಬಹುವಿಧ ಲಕ್ಷೋ ಬಲಾಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ ವಕ್ಷ ಕವಾಟ ಪಾಟನ ಪಟಿಮ ಸಾಟೋಪಕೋಪಾವಲೇಪ ಕಟುರಟ ದಟನಿಟಂ ಕೃತಿ ಶಟುಲ ಕಠೋರ ಕಾರ್ಮುಖ ವಿಶಂಕಟ ವಿಶಿಕ ವಿತಾಡನ ವಿಗಡಿತ ಮಕುಟ ವಿಹ್ವಲ ವಿಶ್ರಮಸ್ತನಯ ವಿಶ್ರಮ ಸಮಯ ವಿಶ್ರಾನನ ವಿಖ್ಯಾತ ವಿಕ್ರಮ ಕುಂಭಕರ್ಣ ಕುಲಗಿರಿ ವಿದಲನ ದಂಬೋಲಿ ಭೂತ ನಿಶಂಕ ಕಂಕಪತ್ರ ಅಭಿಚರಣ ಹುತವಹ ಪರಿಚರಣ ವಿಘಟನ ಸರವಸ ಪರಿಪದ ಪರಿಮಿತ ಕಪಿಬಲ ಜಲದುಲ ಹರಿ ಕಲ ಕಲರವ ಕುಪಿತ ಮಗವಜಿತ ವಿಹನನ ಕೃತನುಜ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿಕ ರಾಕ್ಷಸ ದ್ವಂತ ಯುದ್ಧ ಅಪ್ರದಿದ್ವಂತ ಪೌರುಷ ತ್ರಯಂಬಕ ಸಮಧಿಕ ಘೋರಾಶ್ರಾಡಂಬರ ಸಾರಥಿ ಹೃತರಥ ಶತ್ರಪ ಶಾತ್ರವ ಸತ್ಯಾಪಿತ ಪ್ರತಾಪ ಶತಶರ ಕೃತ ಲವನ ದಶ ಮುಖ ಮುಖ ದಶಕ ನಿಪತನ ಪುನರುದಯ ದರ ಗಲಿತ ಜನಿತ ದರ ತಲ ಹರಿಹಯ ನಯನ ಲಿನವನ ರುಚಿಕ ಚಿತ ನಿಪತಿತ ಸುರತರು ಕುಸುಮ ವಿದತಿ ಸುರಭಿತ ರಥಪಥ ಅಖಿಲ ಜಗದಧಿಕ ಭುಜ ಬಲವರ ಬಲ ದಶ ಲಪನ ಲಪನ ದಶಕ ಲವನ ಜನಿತ ಕದನ ರಚನಿ ಚರಪತಿ ಯುವತಿ ವಿಲಪನ ವಚನ ಸಮ ವಿಷಯ ನಿಗಮ ಶಿಖರ ನಿಕರ ಮುಖರ ಮುಖ ಮುನಿವರ ಪರಿಪಣಿತ ಅಭಿಗತ ಶತಮಕ ಹುತವಹ ಪಿತೃಪತಿ ನಿರ್ವೃತಿ ಅರುಣ ಪವನ ದನದ ಗಿರಿಶ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಸುರಪತಿ ನುತಿ ಮುದಿತ ಅಮಿತ ಮತಿ ವಿಧಿ ವಿದಿತ ಕಥಿತ ನಿಜ ವಿಭವ ಜಲಧಿ ಪೃಷತಲವ ವಿಗತ ಭಯ ವಿಬುಧ ವಿಬೋಧಿತ ವೀರ ಶಯನ ಶಾಯಿತ ವಾನರ ಪೃತನೌಪ ಸ್ವಸಮಯ ವಿಗಡಿತ ಸುಗಡಿತ ಸಹೃದಯ ಸಹಧರ್ಮಚಾರಿಣೀಕ ವಿಭೀಷಣ ವಶಂವರೀಕೃತ ಲಂಕೈಶ್ವರ್ಯ ನಿಷ್ಪನ್ನ ಕೃತ್ಯ ಕಪುಷ್ಪಿತ ರಿಪುಪಕ್ಷ ಪುಷ್ಪಕರ ಬಸ ಗತಿ ಗೋಷ್ಪದೀಕೃತ ಗಗನಾರ್ಣವ प्रतिज्ञार्णवतरण कृतक्षण भरत मनोरथ संहित सिंहासनाधिरूढ स्वामिन् राघव सिंह हाटक गिरि कटक लरह पादपीठ निकट तट परिलुटित निखिल नृपति किरीट कोटि विविध मणिगण किरण निकर नीराजित चरण राजीव दिव्य भौमा अयोध्यादिदैवता पितृवद कुपित परशुधर मुनि विहित नृपहनन कदन पूर्व काल प्रभव शतगुण प्रतिष्ठापित धार्मिक राजवंश शुभ चरित रत भरत कर्गित गर्व गंधर्व यूत गीत विजय गाता शता शासित मधुसुत शत्रुघ्न सेविता कुशलव परिगृहीत कुलगाता विशेष द्विदिवश परिणमद मरवनिति कविवर रचित निज चरित निबंधन निशमन निवृत सर्वजन सम्मानित पुनरुपस्थापित विमान वर विश्रानन प्रीणित वैश्रवण विश्रावित यश प्रपंच पंचतापन्न मुनि कुमारक संजीवनामृत त्रेतायुग प्रवर्तित कार्तयुग वृत्तांत अविकल बहु सुवर्ण हयमक सहस्र निर्वहन निर्वर्तित निज वर्णाश्रम धर्म सर्वकर्म समाराध्य सनातन धर्म साकेत जनपद जनिगणिक जंगम तदिदर जंतु जात दिव्य गदिदान दर्शित नित्य निस्सीम वैभव भवतपनतापित भक्त जन भद्रा राम श्रीराम भद्र नमस्ते पुनस्ते नमः चतुर्मुखेश्वर मुखैः पुत्र पौत्रादिशालिने नमः सीता समेताय रामाय गृहमेदिने कविगतक सिंह कथितं कठोर सुकुमार गुम्ब गंभीरं भव भय भेषज मे तत् पठत महावीर वैभवं सुधीयः कवितार्तिक सिंहाय कल्याण गुणशालिने श्रीमते वेंकटेशाय वेदांत गुरवे नमः नमस्कारम्
Thank you, Srimati Ankita Khanna, Sindhuja, and Shailaja for beautiful and amazing invocations. It is my pleasure to introduce a renowned Sanskrit scholar, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra. Dr. Mishra is passionate about Sanskrit. He strongly believes that Sanskrit has immense potentiality to elevate the human consciousness to sublime heights. He received a PhD from Utkal University, Odisha, on the subject of Sanskrit and the evolution of human speech. Dr. Mishra is a professor at Rashtam School of Public Leadership at Rishigood University. He worked at Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture from 1995 to 2021. Dr. Mishra regularly conducts workshops, training programs, orientation courses, and talks for students and teachers of Sanskrit, Mantra, Yoga, and Bhagavad Gita. He writes articles in English, Sanskrit, and Odia. He also composes verses and songs. To the Vande Mataram Library Trust on open source and volunteer-driven project, he plans to generate verified authentic English translations on almost all important scriptures available in Sanskrit. In August 2013, Dr. Mishra launched a 24-hour Sanskrit language radio station called Divya Bharati Sanskrit Radio, which he has been managing single-handedly till date. The Government of India has conferred the President's Award, Maharshi Badrayan Vyas Samman, in 2011 on Dr. Mishra for his outstanding contribution to Sanskrit. It is indeed our privilege to have Dr. Mishra with us today. I now request Dr. Mishra to please deliver his address. If anyone has any questions for discussion, you may please write it in the chat box and we will try to take up as many questions as possible. Over to Sri Sampadananda Mishra ji. Hari Om.
Namaskar. So just give me 1 minute to see the right image in the video.
Yes.
Namaskar to all of you. So I'm indeed very, very happy to be a part of this Mahayajna of celebrating Sri Rama. And I'm grateful to the organizers here and especially Swami Swatmanandaji for giving this opportunity to speak on the Sanskrit-Gems in Ramayana. So when we speak about the Ramayana, it's indeed a vast topic. You all who are attending this must have heard many esteemed speakers giving introduction to the beauty, charm, and importance and significance of this Adikavya of Adikavi Valmiki. So when we speak about Ramayana, we know that it's one of the two great epics of India, the other being the Mahabharata. But when we contemplate on the contents of both the epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, we see there is a great simplicity in Ramayana compared to the Mahabharata. Simplicity in the presentation of the characters, of the events, simplicity in the composition, simplicity in the use of many poetic devices. So this simplicity indeed is the very heart of Ramayana. And this is what brings many people to the Ramayana. Though many are not well versed or acquainted with the original Sanskrit Ramayana by Valmiki, but we have heard stories, many have heard stories or read many Ramayanam in regional languages, heard different kinds of stories. So the regional languages also, like we see the beauty of Ramayana, the stories, the events, the characters, and many philosophical discussions so are presented beautifully following many poetic devices. But in the original Sanskrit Ramayana, we find something really beautiful, charming, and extremely beautiful from the poetry point of view. So that's one part that will be the focus of our discussion today. But before that, we see that Ramayana, what do we discover in Ramayana, Valmiki? Ramayana in general and Ramayana in particular of Valmiki. So the thoughts and ideas which are embodied in the epic literature in this epic literature called Ramayana. So these thoughts and ideas have greatly influenced the thinking of the common man of India. So much so that if someone is speaking about India, speaking something related to India, its culture, its Bharata or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, and if he has not quoted something from Ramayana, not quoted something from the Mahabharata, so it remains incomplete. People say, oh, what? It was a great speech, but there was something from Ramayana, from the Mahabharata. So it is so much of, like in the minds of the common people of India. And these are not merely the sagas of heroes, or in a modern terminology, the mythological stories, but a day-to-day reality for the Indians. So we breathe Ramayana, we breathe Mahabharata in our day-to-day life. So that has been the significance of the Ramayana and Mahabharata and many other texts, sacred texts of India. But when we talk about Ramayana, this is a living entity, and it's a living reality for the Bharatiyas. Sri Aurobindo, like when he speaks on Ramayana, there is a beautiful thing. He says that it's a highly artistic representation of intimate significances of life, the living presentment of a strong and noble thinking, a developed ethical and aesthetic mind, and a high social and political ideal, the ensouled image of a great culture. And we know that this is one of the itihasas. So, what are the itihasas? So, itihasas are this ancient historical legendary tradition when we are speaking about Ramayana from a poetry, purely from a poetry point of view. What a great poetry. So, like if someone asks, where can I experience the great poetry? Turn to the Upanishads, turn to the Vedas, turn to Ramayana, turn to Mahabharata, turn to Kalidasa. You experience what real poetry is. Where lies the soul and the heart of poetry that one discovers in Valmiki, in Kalidasa, in Vyasa. So Vyasa, Valmiki, Kalidasa are the three epitomes of this Bharatiya Kavya Parampara. So these historical events or the legendary tradition, they are turned into a kind of creative use of everything that can be expressed through poetry. And they not only express the social, political, religious, ethical, moral ideas, but the deep spiritual, philosophical ideals of the people of India, the entire nation. So therefore, like we find a difference between the Mahabharata and the Ramayana when we contemplate on the content of these two epics. So the way the mind of India, the heart of India, so the whole Samskriti of India, whole people of India as a nation, as it is described, we see the mind and heart both in Mahabharata and Ramayana. If Mahabharata is the mind, the brain of Bharatavarsha, Ramayana is the heart of the Bharatavarsha, because Valmiki always speaks from that heart. So we find that emotion, that love of everything. So all that the human emotions can express, so we find it in the Ramayana. The kind of, the way the relationships between Rama and Lakshmana, Rama and Sita, Rama, Lakshmana and Sita, with Bharata, with Hanuman and Rama, and Dasharatha and Rama, and all others, that we find the way things are described, they're so beautiful, so beautifully they bring out this relationship. Almost we learn in life how the relationship has to be with others. So we see that after this great Vedic age, in this epic age, the purpose was not just to narrate the stories, the legendary tradition, or the religious tradition, or the ethical, moral values, or the society as it was, but to give expression to the great realizations of the seers and sages of the Vedas, the rishis of the Vedas. So, how beautifully, how significantly the message of the Veda, the message of the Upanishads are carried forward through Ramayana and Mahabharata. And especially when we come to the Ramayana, we see that the profound knowledge of the Veda, of the Upanishad, they are described by this through this story of Rama, Ravana, this sangram between the devas and asuras. And we find that, and this is one of the greatest realizations of the Vedic rishis, that this life here on this earth is always a battle. A battle between what? A battle between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. The battle between the devas and asuras. This Daivasura Sangrama is one of the greatest realizations of most practical happening in everyone's life. So what is to be done in this Sangrama? So how the victory has to be gained over uh, the Asuric forces or the dark forces. So we see in the Vedas that it is by keeping the gods as companions, as constant companions, by manifesting the divine qualities within, that one can get victory over the dark forces. So this message we see in the form of many stories, in the form of, like how Valmiki has described many characters. So the characters like, Dasharatha, characters like Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, uh, plenty of characters. So how beautifully Valmiki has given expression to them, and then the whole psychology behind that. So that is what brings out the Vedic realizations through a simple language and in the form of stories. Some of the examples we will see later. So this is how we find that the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, these two epics, which have influenced the whole cultural, social, philosophical, spiritual life of this nation. And when we want to talk about this Bharatavarsha, when we are talking about our nation, the people, the Sanskriti, the Sabhyata of this nation of Bharata, we draw many insights from Valmiki's Ramayana, from Vyasa's Mahabharata. And Ramayana is not merely, as we find, as we go through the content of the Ramayana, through every verse of Ramayana. Now, when we say that, like we have to pick up few gems from the Ramayana, few things from the Ramayana, it is not that one can really select. Ramayana as a whole is the gem. It is a ocean of gems that is very, very difficult to even pick up something, pick up any chapter, pick up any sargas, sub-sargas, any verse from Ramayana. It's a gem. From the poetry point of view, from the philosophical point of view, from the social, religious, moral, ethical point of view, from any aspect that one can look at, one can pick up these gems. And we are talking about the Sanskrit gems from Ramayana. And why Sanskrit gems when there are several Ramayanas? When there are several Ramayanas in every regional language, so why are we talking about the Sanskrit gems? So, what is so significant about the original Ramayana? Many people do say that if Ramayana, the story of Ramayana, we need to know, and the content of the Ramayana, we need to know, so we can read many regional Ramayans, or the translation of the Ramayana into a faithful translation of the Ramayana into many languages. Yet, dear friends, dear esteemed participants and viewers, one may learn about the stories, some stories, certain aspect of the content of the original Ramayana, but reading it in Sanskritam is a joy by itself, is an experience by itself. This language of gods, or the divine language, here, this is a language which has been sculpted to perfection. That is why the very epithet of this bhasha, of this Deva bhasha, of this divine language, this very epithet with this very attribute has become the very name of this language, Sanskritam, sculpted to perfection, finished, very well done, well designed language. And in this language, we find the grandeur in every syllable, and we find a very rare plasticity of utterance. And this being a silence conscious language, that while reading, while contemplating on any text, and here we are talking especially about the Ramayana, it is just a meditation, a tranquility, the silence that one experiences while contemplating on the verses of Ramayana, verses composed by Valmiki, is amazing. If you have not yet done, do it. Doesn't matter. Not necessary, even if not possible, the entire Ramayana, at least few selected verses, few chapters, just read it. Even though you do not understand Sanskritam, just read it or listen to it. Ask someone who knows Sanskritam to repeat it to you, and you will see what kind of meditative state and state of silence and tranquility it raises your consciousness to. This is unimaginable. It's a matter of experience. Open yourself up and then pick up a chapter or few verses on Ramayana and then see it. And here in India, we believe that, like gods must have walked on this earth, on this land, in flesh and blood, speaking Sanskritam. That's why we call it as the language of gods. We don't know whether we have not heard God speaking. The rishis must have heard them in their meditation. But we common people, we have not heard God speaking. But listening to this language, coming in contact with the beauty and charm of this language, we experience that beauty, we experience that tranquility, we experience that divinity. So we feel that, yes, it raises our consciousness to a state of divinity. It divinizes. It brings such amazing purity. It brings such silence and meditative, a state of our consciousness. But when we contemplate on the verses composed by Valmiki, not only we experience that silence, but we experience the immense beauty and charm of the true poetry. And when we have to deal with Valmiki's Ramayana, Valmiki's compositions, the poetic ability, the poetic genius rather, when we have to deal with it, and when we say that we are dealing with Ramayana, the Adi Kavya, which has emerged from that pure consciousness of Valmiki, it is as if we are dealing with not just a poetry, not just some epic literature, not just some, legends and stories, or any events or characters. It is as if we are dealing with God's plenty. Here we don't have to pick up and choose. This is an ocean of gems. We call it as Ratna Garbha. Whenever we come and look at it, we just pick up few. It doesn't, leave us in empty-handed with the dead shells. These verses, every word of Valmiki is so soulful. It's gleaming, it's pulsating, it's life-giving, it's soul-enriching gems of priceless value. The sad thing is that we don't read, we don't contemplate. We read so many things in other languages. We read novels, we read all kinds of things, but we don't read Valmiki's Ramayana in original Sanskrit. And the kind of teachings that it has, once one enters into the spirit of it, by contemplating on it, by reading it repeatedly, so one finds one, feels like making the whole of Ramayana as the eternal companion to accompany in one's life's journey. It teaches us. What does it teach us? There are plenty of gems that we can collect. I remember long back, Bharati Vidya Bhavan, there was a small book, Gems from Valmiki's Ramayana. It should be available somewhere. So the editor has collected many verses, ethical, moral, very verses from every kanda of Ramayana and given the English translation. If you find it out, you can pick it up and then read it. And you will find that what it teaches us self-mastery. It teaches us of self-perfection. It draws us upwards. It teaches us how to live nobly, how to die nobly as well. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of this text, that every aspect of it is life enriching. It is as if, like when we read through the entire Ramayana, not just the story, from the entire poetry, whatever description is there, it is as if raising us. It is taking us peaks after peaks. It takes us through, many beautiful sceneries, the entire geography of India. Many beautiful scenery, like we travel by flight, we travel by train, we go on seeing the sceneries. When you read Valmiki's Ramayana and then contemplate on this and then see how beautifully, when it is the description of Kishkindha or description of any other forest, the mountains, the rivers, it is as if, like it creates such a living images of those, as if you are seeing it in front of your eyes. That is how the genius of Valmiki has made such grand contribution in building the foundation of this Bharatiya Samskriti. The master poets of these epics, the Vyasa and Valmiki, when we contemplate on the epic literature, we see that, they are as if, like architects and sculptors of life. It's not just the composer of certain verses. They're creative exponents and fashioners of such beautiful forms. And we truly come to know about the national thought, the religion, the ethics, the culture, the morality, and such profound stress on the thought on life. That's why it's very much, and especially Ramayana, is so much connected with our life, day-to-day life. The poetical manner of this, this epic is, on one side we see the substance, the thought substance, the style, the words, the rhythm in which they are composed. Every aspect has a very noble epic quality, very lucid, classical simplicity. And the directness, rich in expression, such beautiful ornamentation that one finds in the poetry of this. And we find what great imagination power of the poets. And when we travel, we will see that in the story of Ramayana, it is as if, like how Valmiki helps us traveling, leading from one stage to the other stage. He describes beautifully the story of Rama's banishment, Sita's abduction, Ravana's destruction. Like when we follow this hero's adventure, like Rama's adventure, step by step, we see him walking with Vishwamitra in the Balakanda. We see him crossing the Ganges with Guha in the Ayodhya Kanda. We see him journeying in Dandaka with Sita and Lakshmana in the Aranya Kanda. We see him meeting Sugriva in the Kishkindha Kanda. We see him listening to Sita's message from Hanuman in the Sundara Kanda. And we see him killing Ravana in the Yuddha Kanda. And this is how you find Valmiki step by step narrating the whole beauty of Rama's life. It's not just story, the beauty of Rama's life, the nobleness of Rama's life, which keeps inspiring us and which will keep inspiring everyone, every human being on the earth, whoever comes in contact with this. So that's why, like says, Yavat sthasyanti giraya saritascha mahitale tavat ramayani katha lokeshu pracharishyati. As long as the mountains are raising their peaks, as long as the rivers are flowing eternally on this land, till then the story of Ramayana, Ramayani Katha, Lokeshu Pracharishyati, it will have that, attraction. People will have attraction for that story. And we see that the beginning of the Ramayana, Rishi Valmiki asks Narada to tell him whether there can be an ideal man in this world of human affairs. For this simple question, what Valmiki receives from Narada a whole lengthy reply detailing the life of Rama. And after Narada's withdrawal from the scene, you can see after Narada disappeared. So Valmiki walks towards the Tamasa river along with his young disciple Bharadwaja. He carries the bark to perform his midday prayers. It's an everyday occurrence. Every day he does this. We are not strangers to such scenes in our lives at some time or other. Then Valmiki stops at the edge of the river and see how beautifully Valmiki narrates this whole scene. He gazes at the beautiful scenery around and looks at the flowing waters of Tamasa. And very quietly, with utter tranquility, the words are emerging from Valmiki. And you can say it's an unconscious sculpting of the poetic image, a perfect simile that you find, and a great teaching for the earnest disciple Bharadwaja. What does Valmiki say? And it is such a powerful, such a beautiful verse. It's almost meditative. If one can carry the content of this verse and meditates upon it and see what does this do to the consciousness. He says, and this is what we find in Valmiki's voice, Akardamamidam tirtham Bharadwaja Nishamaya Ramaniyam Prasannambu San Manushya Manu Yatha Akardamamidam tirtham Bharadwaja Nishamaya Ramaniyam Prasannambu San Manushya Manu Yatha. Each and every word here Idam tirtham, this river, this pure river Tamasa. Hey Bharadwaj, Nishamaya, see, Akardamam, look at this water. It's free from any stain, Akardamam. There is no Kardama. It's crystal clear. Ramaniyam, it's such a pleasure to look at. Prasannambu, it is prasanna. It's so happy. So settled happiness that one finds by looking at this water of Tamasa. It's so transparent. It says prasanna, ramaniya, akardama. Contemplate on these words. Such pure, pleasing, transparent, and happy water. And the simile that he gives, san manushya mano yatha. It is as transparent as the mind and heart of a righteous man. A man who has realized the truth, who has transcended, who is above the ordinary consciousness, who sees the truth alone, who lives a truthful life, who lives a noble, ideal life. How is his mind and heart? Akardamam. It is tirtham, akardamamidam tirtham, ramaniyam, prasannam, sanmanushya. And when we read it again and again and contemplate on these words, it's as if reverberating in our consciousness. It enters, it echoes in our inner space. This is life divine. And it is possible through such a language which is divine in nature. Akardamamidam tirtham Bharadwaja Nishamaya Ramaniyam Prasannambu Sanmanushya Manu Yatha. Read it again and again. So sometimes it happens when you read Ramayana and with a clear mind, with a clear bhava, with so much of openness and receptivity, you'll say you get stuck. You don't need, your consciousness doesn't even allow to move further. Just one words, one description, few words that drag you to such silence. This is the beauty of Ramayana. This is the beauty of the poetic genius of Valmiki. And just imagine what that young disciple Bharadwaja must have imbibed with that unconscious reverence for Valmiki. Now, there are various descriptions. I'll give you one more description from Lanka Kanda. The scene is such beautiful, and we see one whole year Sita has been held captive in the Ashoka grove, Ashoka Vatika. So much of torture, so many ways she was being harassed, frightened. Just imagine how she must have spent this year. Every moment there was this fear. The first few months, it was horrific. It was full of horror. She had no news of Rama. She didn't know what to do, what must be happening. Ravana has been increasingly belligerent. It was as if a living hell for Sita. Just all these perversions of humanity that surround her in that grove Ashoka Vatika. Then comes Hanuman with Rama's signet ring. once again, we see the play of light and darkness, hope and hopelessness in her life. Then she hears that Rama and his army have landed in Lanka. The terrible war is over at last. Hanuman comes to her again, bringing the message of Rama's victory. Now he requests her permission. So Hanuman says, permit me, allow me. I will destroy all these demonesses who have been torturing you. Who have been torturing you all these months. Ma, allow me to destroy this. And listen to the reply of Sita. This is Valmiki. He says, Papanam va shubhanam va vadharhanam plavangama karyam karunam aryena nakaschinna parathyati. Sita says it would be meaningless to wreak vengeance on such small fry. They were just following the words of their ruler. Compassion should be the universal rule for all human beings. Maitri, Karuna. Compassion should be the universal rule for all human beings. Be they good or evil. Even worthy of being killed for performing such heinous deeds. Who can or how can a human being dare even to judge another? It's extremely difficult to say the other is evil. There's so much of evil in every one of us. If this is the lesson that we carry and then put it into practice and develop this universal love and compassion for all, whatever one has done to oneself or to someone. He says, Papa Namba Ashubha Namba. Papa Namba Shubha Namba Padharhana Prabangam. Karyam Karunam Aryena Nakaschinna Parathi. Was Sita had received nothing but very harsh treatment throughout the year. It was all cruelty, such torture. She was as if, just imagine what must be happening in Sita's life. She says, who is there? Nakaschinna Paratyati. Who is there who has not sinned? Who has not committed any mistake? Who has not grown any evil, negative thoughts within oneself? Then why to blame few? That has been Sita's compassion, universal love and compassion, which she has not just carried in her, she has expressed it, has given it throughout. It is Valmiki alone who could depict Sita in all her purity. It is such a joy to read the entire description of Sita. There's endless, verses, endless stories. Therefore, I said that it cannot be just, picked up few and we say that we have done some justice to it. There are poets who are lovers of nature. In their imagination, they have made, so many things. Sometimes we say that is it possible? Such beautiful, even impossible imaginations a poet brings. while describing the nature, while describing someone's personality, while describing someone's life. So here, just look at another wonderful poem where he's giving the description in the Balakanda. Valmiki gives the description of the night. It's almost, like such description that one can even sing this as a lullaby to make the children sleep, or one can sing to oneself or bring these thoughts to oneself to have a good sleep consciously. When Valmiki says, Nishpandas taravah sarve nilina mrugapakshina naishena tamasa vyapta disascha raghunandana. Nishpandas tarava, such a beautiful expression. Motionless are all trees. The trees have become motionless, speechless, nishpanda. There is no spanda, there is no throb. Such tranquility. It is as if the trees are meditating, the trees and plants are meditating, and in silent meditation, they're seeking light, aspiring for light, praying for light. Because without light, there is no life for them. Nishpandas tarava sarve. Nilina mrugapakshina. The mrugapakshina, all the animals and birds, nilina, they're as if, have become secret. They're not seen anywhere. They have entered into their own places. Such silence prevails. Nishpandas taravah sarve nilina mrugapakshina naishena tamasa vyapta disascha raghunandana. He Raghunandana, naishena tamasa vyapta. Everything, all the quarters, all the dishes, all these are filled in with that glooms of light. Then he says, Shanair vyujyate sandhya. Shanair, very slowly, the sky parts with evening. Shanair vyujyate sandhya. Nabho netre rivavratam. Nabho netre rivavratam. It's like the sky has become, is growing so full of eyes, dense with stars and constellations. It glitters with these points of light. Nakshatra tara gahanam jyoti bhirava bhasate. Shanair vyujyate sandhya nabho netre rivavratam nakshatra tara gahanam jyoti bhir avabhasate. Uttishtati cha sitanshu shachi lokatamuda. And the moon is rising. The cold beams of the moon, shitanshu. So consciously, deliberately he uses the words. Uttishtati shitanshu, soothing, bringing calmness and coolness to all. Such a lokatamonuda. It's not just dispelling the darkness of the earth. Loka is not just the earth, but Loka is everyone, everything that is there in the creation. And especially, it is also dispelling by bringing that calmness and coolness. It is also dispelling the tamas that one carries within oneself. Shashi lokatamonuda. Hladayan praninam loke manansi prabhaya svaya. Hladayan, gladdening, bringing joy to the pranis. Manansi, their mind and heart, Prabhayasvaya, by its own light. And he also doesn't forget to mention that night is not just about what he has given the description. At the same time, Naishani Sarvabhutani Vijaranti Tatastata. Yaksha Rakshasa Sanghascha Rudrascha Pishitasana. All creatures of the night, Naishan, the night movers, the nocturnal beings, they're also walking to and fro, the spirit bands, troops of giants and carrion feeding jackals, they begin to roam. Such a beautiful, lively description of the night. Every detail is so carefully selected to produce certain effect. The charm, the wilderness of falling of the night in the forest. Not a single word is wasted. Every epithet, every word, every image here is chosen so as to bring out that effect of night. The subtlety, the profundity, the assonance, the composition of sound so skillfully woven to create this delicate and this kind of movement. As if, like one is walking in the forest by moonlight and afraid that the leaves may break under his footing, his breath as if, growing loud enough to be heard by himself. Such silence. Friends, there is no end to the descriptions, the beauty, charm, profundity, subtlety of the substance, of the style, of the diction, of the ornamentation, of the choice of words in Valmiki's Ramayana. It is not only Valmiki is describing everything using one meter, one particular chandas. We find in Ramayana 13 different varieties of meters, because these metrical patterns, they're meant to create different emotions, different sentiments or spiritual atmosphere. Anushtup, definitely. I mean, when we see uh, it's the shloka which emerges from Valmiki so naturally, so spontaneously when he says, Ma nishada pratishtha tvamagama saswati sama. That itself is such a beautiful verse. Yat kroncha mithunadekam avadhi kama mohitam. This is where the soka shlokatvamagata. It's wonderful to see the narrative meter which is used very frequently in the epic literature. Anushtup, the 8-syllabled Anushtup meter, though the varieties of Anushtup, as it is worked out in the classical Sanskrit meter, are not yet, very structured forms of Anushtup meter or the varieties, not the Anushtup chanda, but the vrittas are not worked out in Ramayana as it is worked out in the classical meter. We're following the same Vedic pattern. We see, of course, sometimes we will find the varieties of Anushtup also, but it is not a conscious creation in that. It's almost the Vedic Anushtup is carried in the Ramayana, in the epic literature. That's where we find lots of flexibility in the use of meters. Tapasvadhyaya niratam, tapasvivag vidam varam, naradam paripapracha Valmiki munipungama. In Anushtup meter. Ma nishad pratishthastu magama shashvati sama, yat kruncha mithunadekam avadhi kama mohitam. In Anushtup. We have Vasanta Vanshastha Vilab, or 12-syllable meter. We have the use of Indra Vansha, Yadahi Rama Prithivim Avapsyati, Prabhuta Ratnakara Shailapattana, Tada Gamishyasya Shubham Parabhavam, Sahaiva Dina Bharatena Bhamini. Okay, the day Rama becomes Lord of this earth, with its great oceans, mountains, and towns, the day you and your Bharata will get a bad and pitiable position of ignominy. So it's for Kaikeyi. Yadahi Rama Prithivim Avapsyati, Dhruvam Pranashto Bharato Bhavishyati, Atohi Sanchitya Rajyamatmaje, Parasya Chaivadya Vivasa Karanam. We find in the same meter, we find the use of Upajati, we find the use of Upendra Vajra, Nihatyatam Yaksha Sutam Sarama, Prasasyamana Surasittha Sanghi, Uvasa Tasmin Munina Saha Eva, Prabhata Velam, Pratibudhyamana. We find the use of Upachandasika, Iti Hrudaya Sukham Nishamya Vakyam, Shruti Sukham Atmavata Vinita Muktam, Prathita Guna Yasa Gunai Vishishta, Parama Rishik Paramam Jagam Harsham. Iti Hrudaya Mano Vidaranam Muni Vachanam Tad Ativa Shusruva, Narapati Abhavat Mahan Mahatma, Vyathita Manah Prachachala Cha Asanat. So in this manner, we find the 13 different varieties of metrical patterns used in the entirety of Ramayana, and not just the metrical patterns are used just to give descriptions of the content, but the choice of words. Such lively description of the characters of the events, it amazes. That's why, right in the beginning, we see that it is as if the entire Ramayana is a musical instrument. Saptabhi tantri laya samannitam. You will read any verse as if one chord is, you are striking the chord of a musical instrument, creating such pure vibration, bringing such music, bringing such joy to the heart and mind. So these are few thoughts which I wanted to share with you all. Once again, I thank and I express my gratitude to the organizers and the viewers. And if there are questions and time permits, we will take it up. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for a wonderful and inspiring talk. It is my personal experience that as we get to learn more and more scriptures through various books and publications of Chinmay Mission or any other such organization, I feel that it would have been so much better if I knew Sanskrit, because it was not offered to us while we were in school. It is unfortunate that through centuries of foreign rule, we have lost connection with Sanskrit, which is the key, which is the mother of all our mother tongues. As you said, it is the language of God. We all appreciate and thank Dr. Mishra, who has dedicated his life for its revival. Thank you once again, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji. We shall now take up a few questions. How do we revive back this divine language Sanskrit?
So, how do we revive? There have been, plenty of efforts in the which are going on at the individual level, at the collective level. But as Indians, as Bharatiya, every Bharatiya has the responsibility of reviving this language. And every Bharatiya must start it at home. Encourage, learn first and encourage your children and all those who are around. There are plenty of tools. And what is available today, the kind of facilities that we get today because of the uh, rise in digital literacy in India. So enormous amount of materials, online materials, offline materials. There is a greater awareness which is growing on with regard to this language. There's no dearth of materials, dearth of efforts which are going on. So listening, whether you want to listen to it, learn it, write it, read it, these facilities were not available, few years before, 20 years before, 25 years before. But enormous materials we have today. But we need that sankalpa. We need that sankalpa. Every Bharatiya needs to make that sankalpa of learning it, of loving it, of spreading it. That love, one must love this language. And once you start loving this language, you can never hate any language. So much of our linguistic, problems, like all the issues which are raised with regard to language, will vanish if people truly start learning Sanskrit. I myself have, in 2013, I launched the world's first ever 24/7 Sanskrit radio called Divyavani Sanskrit Radio. So one can listen to it and learn it. Plenty of materials, 24 hours, one can just listen to various programs in Sanskrit. There are, like various efforts by various organizations, Chinmay Mission, Samskrit Bharati, uh, plenty of organizations which are engaged tirelessly in spreading this language. But where is that willingness? Though many people feel that yes, it is a loss, but who makes the effort to bring it to their day-to-day life? That's where the whole issue lies. So if every Bharatiya makes a sankalpa that yes, it is our heritage, it's something which we all must know, and it is the true identity of Bharata, is the true identity of Bharatiya. The mother of Sri Aurobindo Ashram had said once in 1967, 11th of November, when she was asked about Sanskritam, she said, as every child born in France has to learn French, every child born in India must learn Sanskrit. That's the true identity.
So that's correct. But how do we get our youth to learn the Sanskrit? Because the elders understand that it is a heritage, and we know that, we should learn Sanskrit. But these children are tempted to learn French, learn Spanish. And can you suggest how to inspire these children to study Sanskrit?
Yes. So, my experience working with children and the youth, especially. So, the youth is very open minded. They are receptive, they're open to what you say. But the kind of information which they need, the convincing, information, that beautiful, charming, evidence based, they look for evidence based. And there is such beauty in Sanskrit. It is not just singing the glory of Sanskrit, but the true scientific nature of. I ask the youth that today you are learning science and you talk about science. Tell me how many different properties of an object. Take any object. Take, for example, the object water. How many different properties that your science book can teach you, your science teacher can teach you, or the subject science can teach you. Just mark it out, ask them. So they will say 4 5 properties maybe of water. But if you know, I tell them that if you know Sanskritam, you can know hundreds of properties of water. Why? Sanskrit has more than 200 words for water, and each word is expressing a particular property, because in Sanskrit there is no word for objects. It's not an object specific language, it's a property based language. So every word is describing a property, and they say, wow, this is how Sanskritam is not just teaching you moral, ethical values or some religious aspects, but it teaches you the science, it teaches you about everything that you see around. It's called Jalam because water has the property of becoming solid from liquid. Jal, to become solid. You analyze the words. I mean, there are plenty of talks which I have given on this. They're available on YouTube, one can view it. So this is not the platform where, when we are talking about Ramayana, that of course, like the Sanskrit part, we need to inspire them, but the scientific nature of the language must be brought before the youth of India, so they get truly inspired. So it is not just the language that we have to bring, but the whole knowledge system which lies there. Not just the skill, but the knowledge behind it simultaneously has to be brought before them.
Right.
And I'm sure the youth is going to accept it and then take it forward.
So that's the next question that we have. I want to learn Sanskrit, but it is not in my school curriculum. Please guide.
Okay.
So Chinmay Mission also offers a easy Sanskrit course by Chinmay International Foundation. But Dr. Mishra, if you can also suggest some books or some online course just for a beginner, uh, can you suggest a scheme or outline for studying Sanskrit?
Okay. So, like for last 1.5 years, which we have started, there's a there's an application which we have started called Language Curry. So it is now, in within 1.5 years, we have more than 4 lakhs download in 170 countries. People are learning it.
Wow.
So it teaches you many things. Like it teaches you the simple vocabularies. It teaches you about alphabet. It teaches you the cultural values. It teaches you step by step the spoken Sanskrit. It teaches you the subhashitas, and then how should you speak the language in different situations, and through different Indian languages. Like if you are comfortable learning through Tamil, you can learn through Tamil. If you are comfortable learning through English, so that's one thing. And then another set of books which we have created called Deva Bhasha. So we teach this language from the play school to class 8 in Set MR Jaipuriya school in Lucknow. So where children just, like it's a haste khelte Sanskrit. There is no burden of grammar, grammatical rules and regulations. So one can go to devabhasha.in and then learn about the books, and then, see plenty of audio visual materials to learn Sanskrit, and then get these books also to learn it. So it is very graded books starting from the LKG to class 8, 10 books. So
Gradually.
these are, gradually one can learn it. So at the same time, like if anyone would like to know more about the appreciation, I do conduct Sanskrit appreciation classes. So where people get more interested in Sanskrit and their interest or love in Sanskrit get deepened. So yeah, I can share the link here.
Yes.
Languagecurry.com Bhasha.in, and you can even listen to Divya Vani Sanskrit radio. Just Google it, and then in various platforms this radio is available.
I did hear, because I was going to, be with you today. So I just thought I should listen to the radio once before, at least one, two. But I could just pick few words, understand few things, and I couldn't understand few because I don't know Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Your screen is.
Hello.
Hari Om?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but I think your screen is frozen. So
Yeah, if there are any other questions, then we can address to them.
so the next question is, it is said that Hanumanji was a Nav Vyakarana Pandit. There are 9
yes.
types of Sanskrit grammars. Or is
Yeah.
there any other significance of this expression?
Uh, Expression means, yes, there are various systems of Vyakarana. Even sometimes it is said about Vyasadeva that he is Shashti Vyakarana Vetta, that he knows even 60 different systems of Vyakarana. So, Nava Vyakarana Vetta, the principal 9 systems of Vyakarana, it is the Hanuman speech which even Sri Rama himself had described, that how pure, how transparent, and how correct speech that he has delivered. So, as if he has studied the Vyakaranam and then used the language perfectly. So it's true.
Okay. The next question is, can you throw some light on gems from Aditya Hridayam Stotra?
Gems from Aditya Hridaya Stotra. Okay. So one can just read it and then contemplate it and then recite it every day. So there are many people who have benefited from reciting the Aditya Hridaya Stotra.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
I think he got logged out or something.
Yes.
I think so, yeah. Oh, he just sent a message that his Zoom is not responding.
Okay. So I think
See, one of the, so on Language Curry, when you go, you will find a lot of tools there. I had also attended one of his courses on Chandas, and very beautifully, Dr. Mishra conducts that whole program. And he does many other Sanskrit courses also, which are there, and very structured way, beautifully. So he has dedicated his life to Sanskrit. So, and those tools that he has given, they are very helpful. So anybody would like to learn, understand, and go deeper into the study of Sanskrit, or even begin as a beginner, many great tools are available, and you can definitely benefit from that. So I think we will do the announcements and conclude for today.
yes, Swamiji. Yeah, he could join back. Thank you,
yes.
Dr. Mishra, for an informative question answer session. Thank you. We can't hear you.
We can see you, but we can't
We
hear
can
you.
see you. Can we make some announcements now?
Just a minute. Dr. Mishra is trying to say something, I think.
Yeah, even I feel, but yes.
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 So I was to unmute myself. So that was
Oh,
the reason.
yes.
So my computer gets left, so I couldn't manage the computer, so I had to redo it from my phone.
Right.
Okay. I was just sharing that I had attended the course that you had conducted on Chandas and found it very useful. And I was telling them about that course and how so many tools that you had shared with us in that course are very useful. So thank you very much for coming today and sharing your insights with all of us and giving to us some of these beautiful aspects. That whole Ramayana itself is a gem, and that inspires us, that I mean, and to inspire us to study this whole Ramayana and contemplate more on it. So thank you very much, Dr. Mishra ji. Yes, Meghna ji, go ahead.
Yes. Few announcements. Tomorrow, Tuesday, 20th April, in the morning, we have meditation session with Swami Swatmananji from 11 to 12:30. In the evening, we shall have discussion with Dr. K.K. Mohammed on the subject of Sri Ram Mandir and archaeological perspective from 7 to 8:30. On Wednesday morning, 21st April, which is the Ram Navami day, we shall have satsang and puja with Swami Swatmananji from 11 to 12:30. As mentioned earlier, SIF offers easy Sanskrit course for those who want to learn Sanskrit. You may visit its website www.chimfo.org for further details. Chinmay Mission has been organizing Gita chanting competition for many decades. From Mumbai and Navi Mumbai, thousands of children and elders participate in the same. Idea is to chant, study, know, and live Gita. Each year, it is based on one of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita. This year, it is based on chapter 2, which is Sankhya Yoga. There are numerous benefits of chanting. Do register for this competition. The link is provided in the chat box.
One thing is, this is a competition where you don't have to memorize. It is reading. So it's open book reading competition. So don't have a fear that, oh, we will have to memorize. Only the lower age groups who are not able to read, etc., they have to memorize. Rest of them can see the book and read. So it is more about getting familiar and using the book and chanting. So do participate. The phone numbers are given here, and it is done online. So last year also we did, this year also it will be online. So do participate and encourage others also to participate.
We are celebrating SiyaRam festival in support of construction of Sri Ram Mandir. Temples are centers of our faith and glorious culture. A great temple is coming up in Ayodhya on Ram Janmabhoomi. Our generation is blessed to have the opportunity to witness its inauguration in near future. Kindly contribute generously for Ram Mandir. Link is provided in the chat box for information and online donation. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel Chinmay Mission Mumbai, as well as like our Facebook page Chinmay Mission Mumbai, and help us to reach maximum people. We shall end today's session with Shanti Path. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Sampadananda has joined again. Would you like to say anything? Okay, he's exited it.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay.
Hari Om.